Welcome to the Health Fix podcast, where Dr. Jannine Krause, that's me, gives you, a health junkie, a weekly dose of tools to help you increase your energy and resilience to life's stressors. Hey, health junkie, do you want to take the conversation to the next level based off of the Health Fix podcast? Well, you're in luck. Head over to the Facebook group for this podcast called Find Your Health Fix. There you'll find me answering questions, but also dropping in all kinds of tidbits and keeping the conversation going all about health. And you'll never know what you might learn and what might open up a door to a new you. Hey, health junkies. I have Kathlena on, and she is the Allergy Chef. And we're going to be talking about all things food, allergies, and intolerances, and really not just food, water, air, etc. Because this is not just something about what goes in our mouth. It's like what we breathe. It's the environment that we live in. And with over 200 food allergies and intolerance, and most of these things also in water, I'm concerned about that with a lot of my patients. And Kathlena has a profile that's not uncommon for what kind of folks that I see in my office. And, you know, at the wit's end, like you were told 30 days to live. I mean, this is not uncommon. And I think a lot of people will be at first like, well, wait, what? But no, this is something I see in my office every day. So Kathlena, thank you so much for coming on and chatting with me about food allergies and intolerances.
It is my pleasure to be here. And I'm just really sad that you see people like me. Like, it'd be nice if, well, not nice, but it'd be better if I weren't so common, you know?
Yeah. And like we were talking about before we jumped on the recording, it was that whole concept of I'm seeing more and more, and then children. And that's the heartbreaking part here, because now it's going, oh my goodness, what is in our food? What is in our water? What is in our air? And I saw a YouTube with you and your mask on, and you were kind of talking how anytime you leave the house, you've got the mask. So now with COVID, it's kind of like a little bit more.
You know what's funny about that? I mean, it's funny, not funny, but like, okay, I have mixed feelings because you have to realize when I started wearing it years ago, I was harassed. I was escorted off the property. I was treated like a pariah of society, right? And now everybody wears them, like, well, not my style, but like everybody's wearing something. And then it's like, this is weird. Like, it just, I don't even know how else to describe it. It's like, I don't even know how to feel about it. It's just so strange to me.
Well, and smart of you to think about wearing a mask out, because I have a lot of patients who have no idea how much the 80,000 plus toxins that are in our air affect them walking into a building, or someone's perfume can be the difference between a good day and a bad day, or a moldy building can be the
Well,
difference.
we learned really quickly with me that Airborne was a big issue. I mean, you know, part of what pushed me into the sickest I got was I couldn't go outside anymore, right? Like, you would barely touch me and I was in excruciating pain because the inflammation response was just way off the charts, like way, way, way off the charts. And I mean, I was taking loads of over the counter things to just try to like quell it enough to leave the house to drive the kids to soccer, right? Like, we're talking like basic tasks here, that were monumental at that point. And so, um, I'm sure you know the company. I think it's called I Can Breathe. And so I started with their system, and I had read about it and people who were using it. And so I ended up with like 4 or 5 layers, and it was so hard just to catch a breath, right? And at the time, the respirator that I have right now, it used to be about $700. And we were like, there's no way we're shelling out that kind of cash and not even know if it's going to work, right? That's the kicker. Um, and so it was just a process. And we learned that while the masks did help, number one, it was hard to breathe, which is kind of counterintuitive. Number two, I was essentially starting to get like CO2 poisoning from just breathing my own exhaust constantly.
Mm-hmm.
And then number three, it wasn't super effective, right? It was effective to a point, but there were certain things where it was like, this is not working. Um, and so then we kind of looked into the respirator again, and it had gone down in price. So we finally decided we would move forward. What's interesting is I talked with the scientists at 3M, and they had recommended the filters a step down from the one that I have. They're like, oh yeah, you don't need the, you know, whatever number it is. And I was like, are you guys sure? And they're like, yeah. So I actually tried three. I tried the one I have, which is the number one, and I tried number two and number three. Number one worked great. nothing got in. And just to test it out, we were like, you know what? We're just going to jump through. I'm a deep end kind of person, right? No pitter patter. So I walked into the kind of restaurant where I would probably end up with anaphylaxis without it. And I was fine. Nothing got in. I was like, this is great. This is really cool. Then we swapped the filters, and sure enough, things were coming in. I was like, we're not even going to try filter option number 3 if number 2 is already not working. So we ended up with number 1, and it's been great. I mean, it's painful. People think it's so cool. I'm like, no, it's not. It's like a death grip on your face to keep the seal, you know? And there's this little muscle that you don't even know that you have at the base of your neck that you have to develop to build essentially a tolerance to wear it for long periods of time. And mask leak is awful. And it's kind of funny. I've talked to a few people that wear them, and we all agree, like, you know, it's time to change your filters when you can taste stuff. It's the weirdest thing. But yeah, no, the respirator is, it for me, it was a lifesaver. It allowed, not only did it allow me to go places, but, and I'm sure you've seen this in your practice, it's like, it's the bucket theory, right? All these exposures lead to continued issues. And so the more we can reduce these exposures, like we're alleviating the stress off the body, which is a huge part of the healing process. And I think it's kind of overlooked in complex cases where, you know, a lot of people get so focused on the food, but they're not even talking about everything else.
The water, and that was something that you had mentioned. There's the most water that you have trouble with. What are you doing with your water? What kind of filtration system? I'm sure a lot of people are listening to this being like, hey, what do you got? What
have I got, right? It's called Raw Water Summit Spring. They're the only company in the United States with an exemption to not treat the water. During my diagnosis process, we were trying to determine if I had a true water allergy or something else. And a lot of specialists were kind of chiming in and trying to figure it out based on what they had seen. And what really is a game changer, and I'm sure you do this in your practice, you must, because any good doctor does it. It's food journaling, right? But it's like food journaling to the max. It's not just what you eat, it's everything. And so the trend that we noticed was when I took a shower, determined how much pain I was in, which is not a true water allergy, right? Because it's kind of either on or off. And so what we had determined was when I took them in the morning, I was in considerably less pain than in the evening. And it really came down to just histamine load, the bucket theory, how much, food did I have that day? What did I have that day? And if I took the shower at the end of the day, the stimulus and the heat, it just triggered reactions, right? And the best way to describe it is it feels like someone's throwing knives at you when you're trying to take a shower, to the point where you'd just rather not shower. Like you think you literally sit and kind of go, do I really have to take the shower today? Like, can I get away with another day? Because I really don't feel like this pain today. And so that became one of the big clues in my diagnosis. It was a lot of things like that. But without the journal, we would have never made the connection. It would have just always been like, yeah, when I take a shower, I'm in pain. Well, how much pain? Oh, So it's like that journaling was so important. So in my case, I don't have a true traditional water allergy. I just have the symptoms of a water allergy. And so, and that was part of the 30 days to live diagnosis, because I was no longer able to consume more than about 2 ounces of water a day. It was like swallowing razor blades. It was so painful that it was like, I can't do this. Like you literally can't do it. And I'm talking like micro sips. Every micro sip is a razor blade, right? And so I started doing some research online, and I found this company in Washington State, and they bottle the ice melt from a specific mountain. And I was like, wow, that's genius, right? Surely I've got to be, because at that point we had tried water from all over the world. We were working with a company, oh my goodness, sweetest people you'll ever meet. They're called Salacious Drinks. They're so nice. They helped us get water from literally every continent. Any company that would export, they were getting us water, and I couldn't drink any of it, like at all. I had gone to like Mount Shasta and bottled water at the spring, couldn't drink it. Like we were trying everything. And then by chance, because I found the place in Washington, I had just missed their season cutoff ordering date.
Oh man.
And the next link down was Raw Water Summit Spring. So I got in contact with them, and Brian, who is amazing, talked with him. Turns out there's one other customer just like me. And so he knew that this could be a viable option. And then he actually sent me water in glass and plastic just in case I couldn't do the plastic. And he was prepared to send me a whole pallet of water. He's like, if this is what works, then we'll figure out how to get you more. And I mean, like, he was so amazing. Turns out I could drink the water. And it was the first time in a long time that I was not in excruciating pain. And it was like, wow. Like, you don't realize how much you take for granted until it's gone. And then you're like, wow. In fact, even now, years later, sometimes I'll take a sip of water and I'll just be like, what a trip, man. What a trip. Like, I still think about this. So yeah, Raw Water Summit Spring. They have two lines. The raw water is completely untreated. The Summit Spring bottle, it's the same spring, but then they do like a UV light treatment just for people who want that option. But truly untreated, government untreated water. Everybody else, I don't care where you're getting it from, there is a type of treatment, and that's the part I'm allergic to. It's the chemicals that are going into it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This is, I mean, folks who are listening, this is real stuff. Like, this is stuff that I do see in my office. Kathlena is not unique. This is, I wish she was, but this is a real deal thing. The water treatments do have an effect on us, and like she said, a compounding effect. And this is the other thing that I see. I mean, I have so many folks who it starts with foods that we identify, and then it's like, well, what about air? What about water? What about all of these things? Yeah. So tell us a little bit about how you first started to notice, and like, how old were you?
I get this question a lot, and what it boils down to is I have been sick since before I was born. Right? I've been sick my entire life, and I'm not exaggerating. I'm not like that's just the harsh reality. And I was born with some food allergies because I can remember as a child, like, not being able to eat foods or eating foods and really feeling unwell. But at the time, again, if it wasn't anaphylaxis, doctors weren't saying, oh, food allergy, right? And if you weren't showing signs of like obvious anaphylaxis, like I can't breathe, they still won't put two and two together. Because nowadays we look at anaphylaxis and we say if two or more major systems are involved, and within a certain time frame, and depending on the severity, we're going to call it anaphylaxis, even if you can still breathe, right? So when we look at someone who maybe has like severe GI issue plus skin issue, we're still calling that anaphylaxis because it's two major systems within the time frame, and it's major enough, to require treatment or whatever. Whereas back then, you could probably have those and they would not think anaphylaxis. They wouldn't think EpiPen. They wouldn't think a lot of things. And looking back, hindsight always being 2020, I think the real giveaway was the weight, personally. If, for me, that's what gave it away for one of our kids. It was like, I knew how much he was eating. I knew how much he was playing. He was a kid who loved to play. And he shouldn't have been that size. Like, I don't care what you, like, I get the whole, like, two people are the same, kids are in a range, blah, blah, blah. Like, I get all that. Like, really, I do, I promise. And at the same time, we have to leave space for that, 10%, 20%, whatever percentage of people we want to say has a food allergy or food intolerance, because we know the number is higher than what the official standards are telling us, right? We have to leave room for that person to say, that weight gain, that's not normal. That is a problem. And so, I'm not saying you should be putting your kids on a diet or restricting their food. What I'm saying is number one, let's look into some tests, right? He had a great pediatrician who, we already knew he had a dairy allergy. So that was good in the sense of we'd done all these tests. She did all these things on him, even did like a sleep study. And then finally said, we know he's got a milk allergy. Let's just do an updated food allergy test, like just in case. And I was like, oh, okay. Sure enough, turns out he was allergic to more stuff. Take the food out, weight fell off. And I was like, I knew something was wrong with this kid, right? And, that was me. I was the fattest kid you'd ever meet growing up. I should not have been that size. And no one ever said, hey, there's something here, right? And I had other signs, right? I was always in pain. I had all sorts of GI issues. I was the kind of kid, eating was like torture for me, right? And I'd sit there for like over an hour just trying to finish a meal, and And I showed all the signs. Looking back, it's like I deconstructed every meal religiously. I mean, my little child logic was like, let's try to figure this out, right? And obviously I didn't, but I was clearly onto something. And the weight gain, though, that was the huge, huge kicker. When you've got a kid in kindergarten who's 60, 70 pounds, it's not normal. When you've got a kid in high school who's 350, 400 pounds, that's not normal. Um, I think my top weight was about 450 pounds, and I'm grateful now I'm about 300 pounds lighter. But that was, to me, the big aha giveaway, right? And to have all these practitioners who just kind of chalk it up to, oh, your kid eats too much. Like, oh my goodness. It's
trauma.
crazy to me. Yeah.
Total trauma. I think there's a lot of trauma induced in this realm because it's like, oh, you're eating too much. Oh, you need to cut calories. Oh, you need to exercise.
Or they want to like put you on birth control when you're a teenager, right? I grew up in that time frame where they looked at every female and said, oh, you have a problem, here's birth control, right? I mean, I'm grateful that I had a parent who said no, not for the right reason, said no for the wrong reason, but whatever. They still said no. So I'm just going to chalk it up to a win at this point, because I know now that probably would have made me a million times worse, right? Like, and we look at how things are now, right? Right now, and I'm sure you're seeing this in your practice. You could probably, I bet you and your friends who all have like a network together could look at the age group of patients, and you could pinpoint like, oh, they're part of that generation who said, let's put every kid on birth control that has these 5 problems, because now we see them with infertility, PCOS, weight gain issues, blah, 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 right? I bet you could probably grab groups of patients by age and completely understand what Western medicine did to that generation of people. And that's why I'm like, I'm all for Western medicine when you have a heart attack. I think they're awesome, right? But I think there are sometimes when you just need to look at other places, because Western medicine, they only get so much training in food, right? For them, it's like, you have the symptom, oh, I know the perfect pill for you. Like, cool. I think not really,
No, I mean it's hard because there's a one track there of like, this is the solution, pill, surgery, therapy, whereas for naturopaths and acupuncturists and functional medicine docs, we're like 8,000 different options, which can be confusing in and of itself, no doubt. But when it comes to food and when it comes to toxins, I mean, these are things that in my office, it's no stone left unturned. We're going, all right, let's dive deep and see what are all the realities here. Now you dove in and became the allergy chef here and dove into all of the different foods and how to do that. And I think for a lot of people, that's the crux of it, because water, we just find something that works, right? That's kind of like singular, right? And then air, we find something that can purify our air, done. But like food, there's so many variables. And that's where I hear with so many people, they're like, I don't even know where to start. So what would you tell folks in terms of what you've experienced and how you're recommending things? Because of course, folks, we're going to talk about Kathlena's membership site that you can go to that can help you with all of this. But I want to get a little tidbit just to give you just a little bit if you're starting this journey out and you're like, I don't even know where to start.
So that's like the huge thing. And it's funny, not funny, but I see this all the time. And, I see people where they're like, I'm allergic to black pepper and there's nothing to eat. And I'm like, really? Nothing? You're sure? You're talking to me here. Nothing? Like people get so overwhelmed, and I get it, right? It's hard. I think I am really blessed in that the way my brain operates, it doesn't see it as overwhelming. It just sees it as, oh, here's a problem, here's a solution, right? It's a very scientific way to approach things. And I guess that's just sort of who I am. But I always tell people the same 3 things when you're like newly diagnosed. Number 1, feel sorry for yourself. Like acknowledge the loss and grieve it. Because for some people, food is their love language. Food means so much to them. Food is like family gatherings and precious memories and grandma's cookies and all these things, right? That now you may no longer have access to. I think you have to acknowledge that loss, or else, I don't know, you're like always sort of fighting your own emotional baggage, right? Mm-hmm. Number 2 is to address your craving. So for most people, it's a sweet tooth. For some people, it's going to be something savory. Eat something as simple as a date, right? Trigger that reaction in your brain to kind of go, oh, I have these restrictions, but I still can have something sweet. You know what? Everything is fine, right? Like we want that feeling. And then the third thing, and this is always the hardest, pull yourself up by your bootstraps and get busy doing, because no one's going to do it for you, right? No restaurant is going to invest 10 million in new equipment to serve just you. That's unreasonable, right? No food company, depending on your diagnosis, can literally serve you. You're going to have to do it yourself. And the more you rely on yourself, in all honesty, it seems hard at first, the more free you actually are, right? Like I have so much fast food in our freezers. It's like, oh, you hungry? Here, grab this out of the freezer. You know, kids are like, there's nothing to eat. I'm like, did you check the freezer? Well, no. Okay, well, get up off your butt and go look in the freezer. So much food, right? And there's so much there. Yes, it requires planning. Yes, it requires elbow grease. But after the first few months, suddenly it's like, you know, in one day we produced something like 450 cookies in the freezer for me to eat. So I've just been eating cookies for like months on end. Like, oh, you're hungry, grab a couple cookies. Like, it's no big deal, right? It's learning the system. It's honestly, it's a lifestyle. And I think that's really where, you know, for example, our advanced recipe search, it is literally the most advanced tool anywhere on the internet for people with restricted diets. And I like to use the term restricted diet because it includes the whole community. It's, you know, special diets and, you know, EOE and different conditions. It's all of us combined. Nobody's taking into account like less common allergens, right? Like you can find an egg-free website, a gluten-free website. We found that once you had 3 or more major allergens, or even just 1 or 2 less common allergens, no one was helping you. Or if you were a special diet with an allergy, so like soy-free vegan, nut-free paleo, coconut-free AIP, right? No one was helping you. And I was like, that's what I'm going to change. I'm going to catch everybody who falls through these cracks. And so our advanced recipe search has like more than 85 filters where you can put in like, it's really cool because it's an and search. Okay. The recipes represented have to meet all of your needs. It's not an or search, it's and. So if you go in, and right now the system has over 500 recipes to pull from, and like you put in like, let's say, corn-free. And when you say corn-free, we go by truly corn-free. So I have a severe corn allergy, anaphylaxis. Like we know corn. If we say it's corn-free, we really mean it. We don't do the whole like corn light, moderate, all that stuff. So like, let's say you're corn-free and you are paleo and you're vegan. You can pop in those 3 things. And maybe you're even low histamine. You pop that in as well. And suddenly the results there are customized to your needs. And what's really cool is we added the option to do like specialty meals. So like maybe you just want a muffin or a pizza, or you want breakfast or a snack or whatever. You can add all these filters. And then of course you can bookmark filters and keep coming back, and it's dynamically loaded. So as new recipes go in, your results get updated. So it's a system that doesn't exist anywhere else. You know, there's a couple of systems where you can put like ingredients in your refrigerator and get a result. And that's cool, but it doesn't quite cut it, where it's like, we're looking at the diets and the food groups and the individual allergens and all these things. And we're putting it all together like never seen before. And, you know, we have people who cry because it's like, you get me. You actually understand my needs and you've already met them. It's like, yep, I get you. I've already been there, you know. And I like to tell people, raise is everything you wish you knew the day you were diagnosed. Yeah. That's what the platform is.
I absolutely agree. As soon as I saw it, I was like, holy crap. Like I literally, way back in the day, my history of social media and getting online, I created a website called Recipe Whisperer because I was doing this for my patients. And so I started trying to do all this, and it became overwhelming. So of course I was like, never mind, I will just let other, people do that trick. And yeah, your website is the most comprehensive. It covers all of the things that, one would be looking at, especially a doc when someone's like crying in your office and going, I don't know what to eat. I can't eat. I haven't eaten for days. Because exactly. I do have people that come in and say that I have not had food in days because I don't know what to eat.
I have been there where it's like, I mean, there were days where I was too sick to eat. There were other days where I was just too tired to cook. And there were other days where it was, there's just nothing to eat, and I learned early on that if you didn't plan seasonally, you were in trouble, right? Because if you weren't sourcing XYZ ahead of time with farmers and doing these things, by the time the season was up, you were out. And then it was like, crap, because what am I supposed to do for the next 7 months? And I've had that happen a couple times, or you have companies that just go under and you're like, but I needed you. And they're like, we can't afford it. And it's like, oh my goodness. And that's kind of why, for example, on the platform, it's really rare that we will use a pre-made product in a recipe. We really believe in like 100% from scratch. Like, you're making your own spice blends. Like, you are not buying stuff, because we don't want you to get into a situation where you're relying on a pre-made XYZ. We tell you, like, if you have one, use it, but here's this recipe for it, because we want you to be completely free from the system if you have to be, because we understand.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's huge because I think a lot of people will be like, "Oh, I need my Italian spice mix for, making Italian food." But then it's like, did you ever read the label on the spice mixes? Because they're like, you think it's just like a taco mix, or you think it's just like a chili mix, but then when you read the label, you're like, "Well, why do I need citric acid? Why do I need,
Right.
it's like, do I need this in there?" And this is, I mean, that's a great point that you put across, because I think a lot of people, don't think about that. The other big thing, and this is great timing, your podcast, this is going to go out right around the holidays. And in particular, Christmas holiday, I think a lot of people with the allergies will trip around the holidays and be like, what do I do? So, what happens for holidays at your house, Kathleen? Does everyone come to your house? Do
So
what's the
it's
story?
changed over the years. For a while, we were the host when I had the energy to be it. And that was really hard. And then everybody went to grandma's house and I just sent food. That was hard because the kids were at the age where it was like I didn't want them to feel excluded or different. So I had to find out what everybody else was making. And then I would have to make, and at the time, our three boys were on three different diet tracks. There was a little bit of overlap, but it was like I had to make three different types of turkey and three different types of this and three different types of and three different types of, and oh, I can make one of these, but three of these and two of these. And, it was this whole thing. And then one year I finally liberated myself. I was like, hey, you guys want to do pizza? They were like, what? I was like, yeah, let's just make pizza that sort of reminds us of Thanksgiving just because we can. And they were like, okay. They got into it, right? And then we just started doing very non-traditional things. And as long as it was like fun food, they really didn't care. As long as they were like at grandma's house with their own little tray of whatever, they were happy. And so that's what we ended up doing. I know for this year, like for example, we're just going to do an easy oven roasted chicken with some vegetables, like super basic. Um, because honestly, it's like I get to the point where it's so much work. And I don't talk about this a lot, but personally, like I kind of hate food and I hate holidays and I hate all the extra work because I don't win, right? It's just this constant outpouring for me. Like I have to do this for this person and this for this person. And then by the time I'm done, I'm too exhausted. I'll literally eat a cookie and go to sleep. Because it's not like I can sit there, after all that cooking with a respirator and just sit there and watch people eat. It's not that fun, right? There is no winning. And so for me, it's like, here, go take your stuff and go. Let me go to sleep. Um, so now I'm just at the point where it's like, if you want something, it's going to be so basic and that's it. And if you want something else, you can make it yourself. And I mean, it helps that the kids are considerably older now, but I think around the holidays, the key is to let go of the idea of traditional and just hang on to the things that actually matter to you. If it's grandma's house, then make sure it's at grandma's house. If it's a very specific holiday drink, focus on the drink, right? Focus on recreating that one drink safe for you and then just eat your safe sandwich, right? Like, don't try to recreate the whole thing because part of what people miss is that traditionally you have a group of say 20 people coming together, but the meal is divided amongst, four or five or even six people cooking, right? So when you're now taking the work of six people and putting it onto one person, it's too much. The other thing we tell people to do is if you can be the host, but allow everyone to come early so that you still have six people cooking in your kitchen, right? Because now you're distributing that load. You're still having a great time. You know, it's a different atmosphere altogether, but you're not doing all the work. Because I think that's really where the whole stress and pain of it comes in. It's how much work you have to do that one day for the one day. Like, no, I'm good. I don't, yeah, no thanks.
I appreciate your honesty because I think a lot of people really do feel that way. I myself struggle with multiple different food sensitivities. I don't have the extent which you have going on, but I do get overwhelmed and tired and just like, oh, forget it. You know, it
Yeah.
is, and I think a lot of people just need that permission to be like, we're going non-traditional, or we're going to
You
pick
know
up
what? If I can do
something.
nothing else today, I give you permission to sit around and do nothing and eat cookies and keep it simple. Like, please. I think that that's definitely something I love to do. Give people the permission to throw traditional way out of the window. Just do what you want. You guys, it's just food. Like, just do what you want. If it's safe and delicious, who cares? Like, keep it simple.
Yeah, do what works for you. And you know, traditional folks, they can do their own thing. You don't have to eat it.
Yeah.
They can bring their own thing.
Yeah.
Makes sense. It makes sense. I like that because I think one of the biggest things, like I said, folks coming in saying I haven't eaten for days, I don't know where to start. The other thing is I'm overwhelmed and I'm sick of making my own food all the time. I'm sick of not being able
Mm,
to go out to eat. Um,
yeah.
you know, it's definitely a thing. And I love that you said you have frozen fast food
Yeah.
because the concept of fast food, you know, obviously we know the traditional fast food's got so many chemicals in it, it's not even funny. But if we can make our own versions of fast food. Now on the website, I didn't catch this, but do you have, like you said you had snacks and different things on there. Do you have like frozen fast food, a section?
We don't call it frozen fast food. Maybe I should in parentheses.
That's just the
It's
list,
called
right?
freezer friendly. And so any meal that's freezer friendly, you can actually check that box off in the advanced recipe search as well. And it
That,
will combine with your allergies, anything that we've deemed safe for the freezer. I'm a huge fan of batch cooking. In fact, we actually made an e-course all about it because I'm that into it. I think batch cooking, when you have, like, if you're only gluten free, I think the world is at a place right now. I mean, don't get me wrong, some of the gluten free stuff, like, I don't think anybody should be eating it, but the world is at a place where you could go out to eat, right? There are celiac safe restaurants. You know, there are gluten aware restaurants. There is a difference between the two, but there are options. Whereas if you're like truly corn free, you're staying home, right? You're going to find, depending on where you live, you might find like one place or two places, right? But I highly doubt it. And so we kind of teach you how to, it's like, once you find those recipes that you love, why not just make a double batch? Because here's the thing, it takes an extra 10 minutes of prep to save an hour in the future. Doesn't
mhm.
that sound good to you? Like, that sounds like pay dirt to me. You know, and with the right containers, and we tell you the kind of containers that we love to use. Like, you can get foil ones with the lids you can write on. I personally use glass for myself.
Mhm.
And in some cases, like a baggie, like freezer baggies make sense. Or an overlooked one, deli containers. If you go to like Smart and Final type stores, like restaurant supply stores, where they sell deli containers, and I get that not everybody loves plastic. Like, I think there's a time and a place to get on your plastic high horse. Deli containers are awesome because they are, you can get the individual meal size so that you can just pull one out and thaw it in your fridge overnight. You can get a 32 ounce for, like, say, homemade broth. So there's a range there, and they stack well, and you can get them in your freezer and have a nice organized system. It makes sense, right? And so that's what I'm a big fan of. I love, like, finding ways to save you time. And that's really what Raise is all about, right? We save you time, energy, and money because you're not experimenting with expensive ingredients. We did all the experiments for you. We're saving you time because we're telling you, like, batch cook this stuff, regular cook this stuff, you know, enjoy your life. Cause that's the thing, right? Like, for someone who might have a complex case and 3 kids, you do not have time for yourself, right? Especially if your kids are like 3, 7, and 12. Like, you really are in the deep end, right, of it all, right? And so you've got to have solutions that just make sense. And so, you know, for people listening, something I would encourage you to do, like, write down the meals that you make that you love. You know, for example, if you can have any form of like a stew, those freeze really well. If you can have any kind of like a creamy rice dish where there's a good amount of liquid involved, those freeze really well too. Something you can also do that I used to do a lot, like we would go to Costco, like let's say on a Friday, and then I would spend Saturday pre-cutting the meat, like chicken breast, for example. Um, that way I would freeze it in like 2 pound portions. So that's still a form of prep, even though like you can even add like a marinade and freeze it in the sauce if you wanted to. All these little steps mean that later on, when it's soccer night, the night before, you just grab whatever and you pull it out. In fact, we have these really cool meal planning blank sheets and a video that goes with it on the website. And that's one of the things that we put on the sheet is actually things we don't want you to forget, like soccer practice, dry cleaning, et cetera, because we want you to see your week and kind of go, oh, Tuesday's really busy, so let's use, chicken parm from the freezer. Whereas Wednesday we're all at home, I'll make a fresh batch of chili, right? Chili freezes great too, you guys. And the cool thing about some of these meals is going back to that deli container. If you were to make a triple batch of chili and then freeze it in those containers and then create a lunch rotation for your kids. So let's say you did chili on Monday, Tuesdays are waffles, Wednesdays are sandwiches, which are like really easy to make. Thursdays are snack style, and maybe Friday is fake Lunchable. I call them fake, but they're really real because it's real food. But a faux Lunchable, how about that? So if you made a triple batch of chili for all 3 of your kids on a weekend and froze them in individual sizes, you now have a month or even 2 of Monday's lunches for your kids done. Like now, you take this concept and you multiply this over, let's say you hire hands-on help like a nanny for a week to come and help you every day for just the week. Within that week, you can get 2 to 3 months worth of food. I'm talking all the dinners, all the lunches, maybe not the snacks, but like a lot of the stuff done, all in your freezer, ready to go. You want to talk about freedom? That's freedom. That's complete and total freedom. All you have to do now is just remember to thaw the food. And for that, you set an alarm on your phone with a cute little label that says thaw tomorrow's dinner. That's it. And you're done. Like you're free, and you do this once a quarter. You get someone to come in and help you, even if it's like, your sister, your cousin, your friend, whomever, if they can just come for a week, like after whatever, I don't care how you set it up. Like figure it out. Because for some people, that's where they have to do it. For other people, it's I'll batch cook once a week, like for dinner, right? And that's enough, especially if you only have like one kid. Whereas for other people, it's got to be like a whole system. But to me, that's freedom. Like that's real freedom. And then what you end up with is less of that emotional and mental stress, which, as you and I both know, that's a huge part of the diagnosis for people with complex cases. Stress is a real killer, But if suddenly you're releasing that and sort of giving your body room to breathe, things get way better.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's half the battle really is making it easy on yourself, not stressing yourself out in the same realm. Cause yeah, histamines, the stress warning sign is histamine. And so we're going to get that if we get all fired up about how are we going to do something. And
permission too, like to remember, you guys, your food does not have to be Instagram picture perfect every night. And it's okay to eat chicken nuggets. Right? Like if you have a kid who can actually eat store-bought chicken nuggets and you're stressing to death, please just eat the chicken nuggets one night. You know what I mean? Like give yourself that little bit of freedom to kind of go, okay, I can breathe now, and now I can jump back in.
Right. Right. No, it's all about balance. It's all about balance. I love that you talk so much about the freezer because I think a lot of folks hadn't, and I know that you've been down this so far. You figured it out that histamines, when things are in the fridge for too long, histamines build, and now we can have another reaction. So I just wanted to mention that to folks too, because the freezing of things, you guys might be thinking like, why is everything frozen? Why do you have to freeze everything? Because the longer it sits, the more histamines, the more of an reaction you can have there. And so that's why so much freezing. So we probably, step number 1, get a deep freeze in addition to your regular freezing.
Now, I will tell you guys, as a freezer pro who's literally had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I think we've over time had 5 external freezers, plus we have 2 fridge freezers units. You want the standing freezer and as big as you can get it. Even if you think you won't need that size, I promise, get the biggest one you can get, because what's going to happen is you're going to find, like, say, a cookie recipe, and you're going to love it, and you're going to be like, wow, this is so good. And then you're going to want to double batch it and then have freezer, like stock. Then you're going to make a pot of bone broth and you're going to freeze that. And then you're going to make some stew and freeze that. And suddenly you're going to be like freezing all these different things and you need space for it, especially if you're only one person. Even if you're one person, still get a really big freezer because that gives you more freedom. And a lot of people don't realize this. When you have a big freezer, it actually makes freezing easier because, like, for example, if you were to make a batch of waffles, the easiest way to freeze them is on a tray, and you literally just stick the whole tray in the freezer, let it freeze, and then you transfer to baggies. That way your food freezes in the right shape and stuff like that. But if you don't have a freezer big enough, if you're only working like with a standard, like, you know, those freezers on the top of the fridge thingy, there's no space for a tray, right?
No.
You need the space. So get the full freezer and make sure it's standing, because if you get the island style, number one, you're going to love it because it's like a whole kitchen island. But then every time you have to get into the freezer, you're going to have to clear off your island, and that's going to be a pain in the butt. And then the organization, it's harder to see what's in the freezer. So I only suggest chest freezers for people who freeze lots and lots and lots of meat, because there's just so much of it, like it doesn't really matter. But if you're freezing lots of meals and things like that, for the purpose of seeing how, like, the labels, a standing freezer is actually easier. And then you also have the freezer space on the door too, where you can put stuff on the door.
That's true. That's true. I have one of those, and it's like game changer. You're absolutely right. I never really thought about it in terms of like all like a tray and waffles though. I'm like,
yeah, waffles and pancakes. And what you do is you just, so like, we have a giant Belgian waffle maker, makes 2 waffles at a time. And so I'll use like double, triple batch. You get like 12 waffles, and you can do about 5 waffles on a large baking tray. So you put down the 5, put down a piece of parchment paper, put down 5 more parchment paper, or just let the kids eat the last 2, freeze the whole tray. And then once they're frozen solid, you can transfer them. And sometimes the kids will break them in half and then put them like the quart size baggie, where you can sort of like shove 2 in, or they'll just freeze half, because like one of our kids likes half a waffle. I'm like, whatever, I don't really care. The waffles are there, do what you want. Same thing with pancakes. Although with pancakes, I think we freeze them the same way, and then we just shove them all in a bag. And cookies are the same way. You put a bunch, you just like shove them all on the tray, and then parchment paper, and then put them in a baggie when they're all done. Because at that point, they're not going to stick together. They won't lose their shape. It's great.
that's genius. That's genius. And it sounds like you employ the kids to help you.
Oh, of course. I'm sorry. If you have children with dietary restrictions, and even if you have kids without, they need to be cooking, because here's the thing. One of the greatest crimes committed against humanity, in my opinion, is convenience foods and getting people out of their kitchens, right? To the point where people kind of hate it and they feel like it's a chore, and they're no longer in touch with where their food comes from. I think it's a huge crime. And I think the more we get kids involved, the better they are because of it. I'm not saying it's easy. Please do not mistake what I'm taking or what I'm saying and think, oh, it's so easy. Like, no, you guys, if your child is as young as even like 18 months, they can be in the kitchen. And what you do is you start them with baby tasks, right? Bowl transfers. Here, take everything from this bowl and put it in this bowl. You're keeping them busy. You're getting them in the kitchen. You're developing fine motor skills. It's something for them to do and get used to that environment. Then when they're old enough, 2.5, 3 years old, get kid safe knives. It's the coolest thing that I wish were popular when our kids were little. My kids used to have to like cut carrots with a dinner knife. It was awful. But now you can get legit like kitchen safe knives. You can literally like put it against your hand. It will not cut you, but it will cut like produce. You get your kids with that, right? Start them off with helping with stews, not things that require fine dicing, but just get them used to, cutting large things. And the cool thing is you can even throw in math. Hey, check this out. 1 + 1 is 2. Like you can do all these cool little life lessons, and have them tasting all the time. One of the meanest things my grandma ever did to me, when I was a kid, she was peeling potatoes, and I was like, what's that taste like? And she goes, taste it. And I was like, okay. She let me taste raw potato, you guys. It was so gross. I'm like, Grandma, why would you do that to me? And she's like, well, you wanted to know. And I'm like, whatever. But it's like one of the key things I do to my kids all the time. I'm like, taste it.
Yeah, try it. See what you think.
Right. Yeah, totally. But I'm a big fan of that. In fact, I always tell people a couple of things, especially if you have a child that's diagnosed older. What I encourage people to do, for example, like let's say they have to be dairy free, and you can do shared equipment with dairy, because that's a whole nother issue for a whole different day. But purchase all the dairy free milks that you can, and literally sit down and do a proper sampling and like make it a big deal, right? Like if you have a kid that like is a foodie, get dressed up and be like, okay, what are we doing? You know, like really make it a thing. If not, like still do it, but be like kind of serious, but have fun and really talk about it. Like draw them out of their shell because it's hard with the diagnosis. And so be like, are you picking up the floral notes? I swear there's some floral notes here. Like, how does it, you know, and compare them and contrast them, really get your kid into it because then they're going to be like, that's the milk I like. Right. And now you've made that transition, number one, fun, because maybe they were feeling really down about losing milk. Maybe your kid loves, we have a kid that loves milk. If she lost milk, she would die. Right. She's one of those people who come up and be like, I would die without ice cream. Like, no, you wouldn't. You die if you ate it. That's the point. Right. But she's one of those kids. And so when you get them to taste all these things and understand what they like and what they don't like, you're doing them a great service, right? And then I always tell people with kids, sweeten the deal. Do not be afraid to put a little maple sugar on it, right? Or make homemade chocolate milk with your kid. Make it 5 different ways so that they can be like, oh, I like it this way, you know, or can we add a pinch of, can we do like, get your kids involved. The other thing that you can do with kids is pasta sauce, which is really cool. And you can even do this with adults, especially if you're new to cooking. Put in the tomato products, taste it, and it's going to be pretty gross, right, for the most part. And then add the salt, taste it, add a little sweetener, taste it, add each seasoning one at a time, tasting and smelling as you go. By the time you get to the end, it's a whole different product, and you're like, wow, that's cool. And it's a whole process. And you know, I did this with our kids a lot, and the end result is that now, years later, I'm cooking and somebody literally walks in, they go, did you use smoked paprika? And I'm smelling onion, but also like, is that, you know, and they will literally sniff out what I'm using. And I'm like, you know, and it's so fun to watch, you know, and it's a process though. And you've got to sort of be in it to win it. And you just have to know going in that it's a long-term goal. And I think you should have the goal not just for your child, but for yourself, because maybe you have a lot of food aversions and you have to kind of retrain yourself on how to enjoy your food again. And that's a huge part of it because food should nourish, but it should also be a fun experience.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. I am like, why weren't you my mom? It's so much more fun introducing food. Dang it. No, your kids are super lucky, and this is something that I think is really important. And I'm glad that you're sharing this with folks because I think a lot of people try once and then give up if the kid's not interested. And it's, I think I read some statistic you have to do it like 17 times or something crazy to get them really interested.
So. Yeah. And I think part of it too, though, and this is just speaking from my own personal experience, if you're dealing with a child with either suspected intolerance or allergy or confirmed allergy or intolerance, or just any child really, never force them to eat. Expose them to the food, give them the option. You know, something that happened with one of our kids is he took a bite of beef and then he started scratching at his tongue. And I was like, wow, it must taste really bad, right? This was before we knew he was allergic to beef. And I was like, this must be the grossest thing he's ever had if he wants it out of his mouth that bad. And a few weeks later, we had beef again, and he did the same thing. And for me at the time, I was like, well, if it tastes that bad, I'm not going to keep cooking it. Like, I'm not going to do that to him. Well, then we found out about a year later, he was actually allergic. And I'm really glad that we never forced the kids to eat stuff. I mean, sometimes like what we did was like, if you want your dessert, you have to try like one bite of the vegetable. Like it was like the one bite ticket thing. And sometimes they were like, okay, I'll take a little bite. And other times they actually really got into it. But it was never like the clean plate club or anything like that. Nowadays, I'm more of a fan of present the foods and, you know, kind of go from there. But I think that if you start forcing kids to eat foods, you're not allowing them to listen to their bodies, and their body might be telling them to stop. So, you know, if you find that they play with it, but maybe they just won't eat it, move on to the next thing, come back to it, you know, don't feel like a failure. And I think maybe that's part of the quitting element, because we as parents, we feel like somehow we've failed because our child won't eat something. But I think the key is it's our job to present the food. It's their job to eat it. Right. And I think that's where people sort of get lost in it all, for lack of a better word.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you just have to keep presenting the healthy stuff and the closest to nature stuff and not give up. Just keep Keep going. Try new things. So I bet a lot of people right now are going, okay, Kathlena, you mentioned Costco, you mentioned, going to buying things seasonally. They're probably like, what bulk places, where would you shop? What's, where would you recommend in terms of someone looking at like, okay, where do I shop? Do I go to my traditional grocery store? Do I, go to Costco still? What do I do?
So it depends on your diagnosis, first and foremost. For a super complex case or someone who has a true corn allergy, you will not be shopping at Costco. You're going to be starting like with Local Harvest, which is a website, and they connect you with farmers who like use real farming practices, like old style stuff, grass fed, all that sort of stuff. And you're going to find farmers in your area that you can reach out to and see if they can serve you safely. You're going to be looking for single ingredients. On Raise, we have what's called safe product guides, where we've done a lot of the footwork for you. And we kind of sort of give you the starting point companies that we've vouched for in the past that you can contact. So you would start with like a list like that. For everyone else, Costco is great for bulk organic meats. They have great quality. We save 50% or more. One of our kids can't do like pesticides, food colorings, etc. He requires organic. So it has saved us. Without it, we wouldn't be able to feed everyone. We have a local co-op in our area that sells like really quality foods. They only bring in companies that they've like vouched for and stuff like that. So that's really cool. I mean, it helps that we have a bakery and I know a lot about food. So I'm able to kind of like source things, and that gave me like the bleeding edge, I think, compared to your average consumer. There's a lot of stuff we don't eat, a lot of snacky snack type foods. I just kind of skip over and I make it ourselves. I'm really big into raw materials. So we order direct from companies and get stuff shipped in. I mean, you're doing a lot of that. I know it sounds kind of weird, but like we used to do Whole Foods more, but not so much anymore, especially since the Amazon buyout. I haven't been excited about them for a long time. Nope. And some of the stuff they bring in now, I'm like, hard pass, you guys. So I think Costco, the co-op, and online. And then in our area, I think this is becoming more popular, where you can get like groceries delivered. So we have a place in our area called Good Eggs, and you guys can look it up. It's called goodeggs.com. And they connect you with farmers, like legit farmers. It's really cool. And so the price is not too much more than a standard grocery store because they don't have a storefront. So their overhead and like employees and all that stuff, it's all different. And you just get stuff delivered. So between the three, that's where we do most of our shopping. I think we get like 2 things from Whole Foods at this point, and that's it. Like literally powdered sugar and maple syrup. That's all we buy from there. Everything else is Costco, Co-op, and Good Eggs. And then of course, direct from companies.
Sure. Yeah, with having a business, it makes it easy. But I think I've also started to order some things directly too. So I think this is probably where we need to head. And yes, folks, I agree with Kathlena on the Amazon takeover of Whole Foods.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. Bummer. So that's definitely where I'd be heading in that department too. So, oh my goodness, we've talked about so many different things. I think we've given folks a good array of like where to get started. But honestly, I think the magic is in your website and what you've got going on there with all the recipes, all the suggestions, and just the fact that it's a membership. I think that's really cool because now we have folks being able to keep getting great info from you. So it's www.goraise.net, folks. And we'll have a code there. It's health50, health spelled out and 50, to get 50% off your first membership there, your first month of your membership for Go Raise. But Kathlena, wow. You also have a ton of YouTube videos too. And I'm saying wow because you guys, like, you have no idea. I perused all of her stuff before this because I'm kind of kicking myself in my butt for not seeing you before. I'm like, how did I not find you before? Like, where have you been all my life?
That's what everybody says to me. They're like, where were you 3 years ago? And I'm like, I was here. I'm really sorry you didn't know.
I know it unfortunately what happens with media and what's on, people who are paying the ads and stuff and cranking out. You know, unfortunately, a lot of the ad material that gets out on, then you guys see on the top of the stuff, ends up being not as high quality as some of the stuff if you go a couple pages in searching on.
Yeah, I think for us, you know, too, it's like with me being a chronically ill person, it always came down to I can either pump out resources or I can play the internet game and do all the SEO and all these things to get, you know, page rank higher and all that. But if I were to do that, you know, Raise would probably have maybe 100 recipes and maybe 100 resources. But right now we're at over, I think we're almost at like 1,100 resources combined. And it's like, I couldn't have gotten there if I had been focused on all the other stuff. So
we're glad that you are in the trenches and getting all the resources for everyone. And podcasts like this are going to definitely be shared, and we all have good resources to put that out. And plus, you know, patient load. And I have doctor friends. And I'd be like, hey, have you guys seen the site? You need to tell your friends about it. Because I was like, whoa, when I was like blown away. So everybody, you got to go check it out. GoRaise.net. Now, what is your YouTube again? I didn't write it down. What is the YouTube?
It's youtube.com/The Allergy Chef.
There we go. All right. And what about like Instagram, YouTube? Are you on those ones? How do we find you on
Instagram? Those? We are at The Allergy Chef. We have like pages at the other places, but you want to go to Instagram. Instagram is where it's at. That's where we're putting out like all the stuffs, great information, links to new things, new articles, all the like, go to Instagram. Like, even if you don't have Instagram, just sign up. Like, I'm not even into social media, and I said that out loud. So, yeah.
Well, you know, I mean, for the business, it's the way we have to like market ourselves these days. And so that's kind of how I roll as well. But I think, I mean, I'm all for what you got going on. This is awesome. And thank you for putting all the effort in. And I know that with multiple sensitivities and intolerances, it's not always an easy task. And some days are shitty and other days are, you know, stellar. So thank you for all my patients.
Well, thank you, right? Like we need more people like you. It's like so many doctors have this big chip on their shoulder and like they don't listen, you know, and I've been there, you know, and it's hard to find someone who will take you where you're at and genuinely help you. You know, one of the best specialists I ever went to, he looked at my case and he said, I have no idea what's wrong with you, but I'll try to help you. And that was like, it was almost a relief to hear someone say that, because before that, it was just, you know, you're getting blamed for things or being told like, this is what's wrong with you. Here, take this or do this or whatever. To finally have someone get off that high horse and just say, I'm a real person too, and we'll just figure it out together. To me, that's real healthcare, you know, and we need that. We desperately need that. So thank you.
Well, you are quite welcome. We're going to put the word out because your website's amazing. And thank you so much for coming on. I think we're going to have a couple more conversations, because I bet I'm going to get questions about like, what do you do in this situation? What do you do in this? So I think folks are
bring it on. Let's do it. Let's chat some more, right? Why not?
Let's do it. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to cut it off for today, but we are definitely chatting after this.